We're good. Get it right. Okay, good morning. Woo! And welcome to the First Parish Church of Stowe and Acton, a welcoming and spiritual community. My name is Sharon Brownfield, and I serve on the Stewardship Committee and on the Climate Change Task Force at FPC. For those visiting FPC for the first time, we welcome you. Please let us know you are here by filling out one of our visitors' information cards in the pews and hand it to an usher, drop it in the plate, or hand it to Meg, who's waving in the back. Our welcoming staff member. Our minister, staff, and board are listed in the front of the order of service. Please feel free to ask me or any of these people for more information. If you would like a large print order of service or hymnal or an assisted listening device, please ask our ushers, or our assisted listening device are small radios. Anyone is welcome to use one of these to listen to the service from any other space in the church. After the service, please join us for coffee and conversation in our fellowship hall. Go straight down there. Or in a breakout room if you're on Zoom. I'd like to draw your attention to the announcements in our order of service. Also, invite you to check out more information on our webpage. Also, there you can sign up for our newsletter and email alerts. One little special announcement. If anyone is really ready to boogie outside, we could use some help in raking leaves. Okay. And now let us come together for a time of community, singing, and worship.
Good morning. Our opening words are titled Witness of the World by Tania E. Marquez. It is now, when we are called as witness of the world, to mend it, to change its course, to restore it. It is now, when we are called as witness of the world, not to hide, but to act on our values. Not to hide, not to fear, but to be bold and loud. It is now that we are called to continue our fight for justice, to organize, to speak up. It is now. Let us gather, let us give each other courage, and let us worship. And Marcia Rising is going to light our chalice as I read these words, The Great Turning by Lisa Garcia-Sampson. In these wild, historic, and uncertain times, we gather to remember who we are, who we belong to, and what we are called to do. As we light this chalice, we kindle the spirit of the Great Turning, the movement for justice alive in this nation today. May we feel it in our bones. And in the stillness, all right, this hour is going to be still. But anyway, in the stillness of this hour, may we sense it calling our name. And now we're going to move. Please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing Woyaya, our opening hymn. We didn't give you the number because we're singing it slightly different than the hymnal, and so the words will be on the screen. And please join in our covenant and affirmation. See, I said it fast enough that you didn't sit down this week. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
We acknowledge that we are on the unceded territories of the Massachusetts, Nipmuc, Pawtucket, and Wampanoag people, as well as honoring and recognize the Black and African people whose unpaid and forced labor built this country and our state. We celebrate and work in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, and people of color, organizations leading the movement for our collective liberation in line with our UU values.
Sharon is our Stewardship Committee co-chair, which leads us to the fact that we are getting into our pledge drive season for the church this year. We'll be kicking it off in just a few weeks, and that's our annual giving drive to sustain the work of this church. And here with a testimonial from the Arts Committee, chair of our Arts Committee is Sharon Webb.
The other Sharon.
The other Sharon.
Raise your hand if you can't hear me, okay? Good morning, everybody. Oh, you can't hear me? Okay. Hey, can you hear me now? All right, great. Good. A long time ago, when I lived in Atlanta, Georgia, on the first Sunday of my then husband's new pastorate at a church downtown on Peachtree Street, I entered the sanctuary, made myself go near the front because I knew I'd be introduced, and slipped inside one of the pews and sat down. A couple of minutes later, two elderly women, sisters, made it clear that they wanted to sit in that same pew. Knowing that I would be called to the front of the sanctuary to be introduced, I had sat on the end of the pew, so I slipped out to the aisle in order to let them in, and then sat back down on the end. In an effort to make, you know where this is going, right? In an effort to make conversation with these women, I introduced myself and said, "Have you been attending this church for a while?" The one next to me responded, "Well, yes, we've been sitting right there where you are for the past 46 years. So much for Southern hospitality. I wanted to tuck tail and run, needless to say. Contrary to that experience, my partner Lisa and I first visited this church in January of 2019. After Lisa left her staff position at a church in Worcester, we had decided to do some church shopping for a progressive church near our home. We used to sing in a choral group with our wonderful friend Johanna Pyle, and she was always telling us how much she loved her church in Stowe and kept inviting us to visit. So if you don't like us, you can blame Johanna. Thanks to Johanna, FPC was our first stop on our church shopping tour. The day of our visit, we decided it could also be our last. We felt an instant connection with First Parish, and the rest is history. To be honest, I'm a bit embarrassed today since I've missed a lot of live church in the last year, in part due to some illnesses. But I know this is both a welcoming and a welcome home congregation, and the people here are there for you no matter what. Just a week ago, I watched a church service online from Chattanooga, Tennessee, where my 9-year-old grandnephew Oscar had been asked during their stewardship service to name one thing that he liked about his church. Oscar said, "I love the sense of community and the people. Everyone is really nice." That's a big part of what I want to say about FPC as well. I love the community and the people are really nice. A few years back, Brad DeMont, Cindy, and I began discussing how we could develop the arts to be even more at the forefront of our church's mission. So an arts working group was begun, and in May of 2023, we became an official arts committee. Of course, music and the arts have long been an important part of the tapestry of this congregation. But since their time, our small but dedicated committee has tried to bring even more arts opportunities, which has included some theater readings, dance, film discussions, art shows, spirituality and the arts workshops, among other events. And just last night, we had a really enjoyable storytelling, the butterfly hour, not to be confused with the moth hour, the butterfly hour. Katie and Dave led it for us, organized it. How many people did we end up having last night? Do you know?
It was like around 40 to 45.
Yeah, great crowd. Raise your hand if you were a storyteller last night. You all did an awesome job, and thanks so much to the audience for showing up as well. At our first big visual art show in the spring of 2023, we were floored at the number of talented artists in our congregation. We could open our own museum, I'm telling you. In fact, we do have our own FPC Arts Gallery downstairs, just outside of Meg's office, curated by the talented Helen Ham, who's a great artist herself. And we appreciate so many of you who have shared your talents and skills in our gallery. The arts have long been both vocation and avocation for me. They are at my core. I believe that worship is greatly enhanced by the arts. I think of First Parish as being a church that focuses on social justice and on the arts. We are incredibly fortunate to have the music power duo of Chris Hosfeld and Trevor Behrens. Right here in Stowe, Massachusetts, we have world-class musicians and a minister who is herself a talented visual artist and who encourages artistry and creativity of all kinds. And Rayla and Lindsay are incorporating more dance and movement and trying to get us to move in worship. I feel honored to have been asked to speak to you today. I've only begun to touch the surface of why FPC means so much to me. Thank you all for being part of the reason why. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. I can't tell you with how much trepidation today, because I alone know what's coming, that I introduce to you our Director of Religious Education, Rayla, for their Time for All Ages.
Don't be nervous.
I'm not really. Not really.
So I know normally for our Time for All Ages, I like to invite anyone to come forward. Well, today, I'm inviting only those who are under the age of 18 to join me up front today. So if you're over the age of 18, stay where you are. Oh, but I also need the help of Lindsay and Sharon.
We got a good crew of kids here today. Excellent.
So you all can decide if you want to sit or stand for this. It's up to you. There's a couple chairs. There's some cushions. And our support people can come too. All right. Do any of you know what important event is happening this week? I'll give you a hint. It's happening on Tuesday. Well, yeah, some of you are going to school. You know what's happening?
I'm going to school on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
School all week, yes. Anything else? They've heard in the news? No? Do one of our parents want to give them a hint? Oh, Quinn.
The election?
Yes. The election. And one of the reasons why I had you come up here, if you're 18 and under, is because how old do you have to be to vote in the election? 18?
Yes.
18. So I thought it's only fair that those of you who are under 18 get a chance to vote on something today. You all want to vote? Put that down. Maybe? Put that down. So, today I have my helpful poll workers. Oh, that's right. Kelsey's checking. Kennedy's going to make sure does everyone have their ID? Chip was helping check IDs at the door. Remember, we always have to bring our ID with us, right, when we vote?
No, we don't in Massachusetts.
Then how do they know who you are?
You just say who you are. It's amazing. But sometimes you have to sign a thing or something.
Are you serious?
Because we have voter registration, we have big lists. Marcia, right. Go through the list. We've now done it electronically. If you by any chance have your license, your driver's license, you can put your driver's license in, and then your name comes up, and I can verify that you were here and you qualify to vote. Your driver's license.
But you don't need it.
You don't need it, but you have to tell me who you are so that I can then enter it into the system, and your name has to come up and verify that you are here in Stowe. If it doesn't come up, then I send you to the warden, who then validates it.
Yeah, so I just had to give my
Thanks.
name and address.
Okay, what do you want to say?
My name is Rudy. I'm 11 years old, and there's my mom right there.
Yeah.
Thank you. So Rudy's eligible to vote today in our election, right? So I'll just tell you, in Connecticut, you have to show your driver's license, and then they mark you off on the sheet. So we're different. So, yes, Rudy.
So my mom right there. She's right there, and yeah, she's looking at me.
Well, Mom's going to make sure that you vote. All right. So Sharon is going to hand everyone a voting slip. And we have two candidates today, Reverend Cindy and Rayla. They're going to select their candidate. Lindsay's going to help them put it in the voting box. After that, they are going to get their I voted sticker, right? They're going to maybe post that on Instagram, right, that they voted, although none of them are old enough for an Instagram account. You are not old enough for Instagram. What are we voting on today? Do you know? What are you voting for? I said that the two people running are Reverend Cindy and Rayla, but what are we voting on? Do you know, Eve? What do you think we should vote on? How about, should we vote on which one of us should wash dishes? No? How about which one of us should go apple picking?
Huh?
Which one of us should go apple picking? No?
Which one should take the kids' money?
Oh, which one should take the kids' money? I don't know if I'm going to run in that one.
You're not taking money from kids.
Oh, you have one you want to share?
I forgot.
You forgot. All right. Well.
Which one is awesome?
Oh, I love Rudy.
It
I
would be a
think that
tie.
might be a tie.
Tie.
Right? Well, yeah. But today we are going to vote for which one of us gets a whipped cream pie to the face. So I'm not trying to encourage anyone to vote any special way. But yeah, let's start the voting. I encourage you to vote for Reverend Cindy because
Gorilla.
Reverend Cindy already has their hair pulled back, right? So they're just ready for that pie in the face.
This election is rigged.
All right, come on up. You're going to grab your voting ticket. Show your ID. What happened to your ID? Yes, Rudy.
Can I say something to my mother? Mom. Can I say something? Today's my grandpa's birthday, so happy birthday to him.
Giving some shout outs while everybody's voting.
And I don't know which one's Lisa up there, but if she knows, if she can hear me, tell Grandpa happy birthday.
Aww.
All right, we're going to wish Grandpa a happy birthday. Oh, Rudy, you got to go vote.
His name is Steve Billington.
Steve Billington, happy birthday to you. Vote for Reverend Cindy. Don't look at the sign that's up there. Look at this sign. Vote for Reverend Cindy. Huh?
Yeah, you're supposed to be a certain number of feet from the ballot box when if you're picked. If you're.
No, we're only voting for me or Reverend
Thank
Cindy.
you, audience, for helping me.
Someone's trying to catch me on a technicality over here. Are you allowed to what? We'll see. C is for Cindy.
Man, I didn't think of slogans.
Cindy's good enough. Kennedy, did you vote?
This is a
Come vote.
completely fair and unbiased election.
Did you vote, Eve? You voted. You got it. Everybody got an I voted sticker? Okay. So this is Reverend Cindy, and this is Rayla. Did you vote, Rudy?
Yeah, I voted for that.
Oh, you voted for me. I think that's a wrong. I think there's been some ballot stuffing. Okay, we have one more announcement.
You wondered why I was nervous about
So
this today.
Mom, if you can hear me, I'm here up on the stage right now. And there she is!
Maybe while we're counting votes, we should just sing happy birthday.
Oh, yeah. Should we sing happy birthday to Grandpa?
Happy birthday to Grandpa. Happy birthday to you, Grandpa.
Happy
birthday, dear Grandpa. Happy birthday to you, Stephen Grandpa Billington.
All right. If everyone has finished voting for Reverend Cindy, you can go back to your seats. Yep. And then Sharon and Lindsay will vote. We'll count the votes for Reverend Cindy. While I get our whipped cream pie ready.
Okay. Taking off my stole here.
I should wait to see whose name is pulled. No, Kennedy. Election interference. What is that? Contamination. Oh, Kennedy.
Well, it looks like you're going to need 2. It's a tie.
I demand a recount.
I am very disappointed.
We didn't prepare for a tie.
Like, I feel like those of you who voted for me didn't understand the rules. Did you vote for me? Did you vote for me? Did you really? Kennedy! Did you see my own child? Did you find a plate? Oh. Okay, we'll share it. Ready? Y'all want to count me down from 3? And I do want to appreciate Reverend Cindy for being a good sport. I don't know too many ministers who would let me pie them in the face. I think it was rigged. All right, you want to play us or sing us out of?
Yeah. So we learned this song last week. We'll learn it quickly again. Repeat after me. Our love surrounds you. Our love surrounds you. Here joy has found you. Here joy has found you. Let hope abound freely. Go in peace and let hope abound freely. Go in peace. All together. Our love surrounds you. Here joy has found you. Let hope abound freely. Go in peace again. Our love surrounds you. Here joy has found you. Let hope abound freely.
I still think that election was rigged. So this is our time in our service when we share our joys and sorrows, things that we want to be lifted up and known in the larger community, that we might share what's on our hearts and what's in our minds. So, except for the election, you know. If you have a joy or sorrow, please raise your hand and the ushers will bring a microphone to you after we share those that we've received online. And then after those here in the room, we'll take joys and sorrows from those online.
The lay ministers received none online. So we'll go straight to in the sanctuary. Thank you, Marcia.
We light one last candle for those joys and sorrows that are left unspoken, and one for the ongoing cost of war. These words for prayer or meditation come from Dana Edwards and are titled Toward the Promise. Holy One of many names and beyond naming, we know that the fight against tyranny, oppression, fascism, hate, and division is not a new fight, but a struggle that goes back to the very beginning of this nation. There are those who would use these institutions to keep poor and marginalized folks disempowered, silent, and struggling. And we know that when we live into our highest ideals, these same institutions can be tools to affirm the inherent worth and dignity of all people. With the grace and strength of divine love to carry us forward in this struggle, we who have been pushed to the margins won't be silent anymore. O Spirit of life and love, fortify us with the wisdom and tenacity of our ancestors to continue to build a new way towards the promise that's written into the founding documents of our nation. A nation where all of us are created as equals and endowed with the inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Blessed be. Amen. Let's take a moment to hold all these joys and sorrows silently in our hearts. Blessed be. Amen. Our next hymn, again, is not in your hymnals. It'll be up on the screens. It's Be the Change. Please rise in body or in spirit.
Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. And change will come to you. Be the voice you want to hear in the world. Be the voice you want to hear in the world. Be the voice you want to hear in the world. And change will come to you. Be the light you want to shine in the world. Be the light you want to shine in the world. Be the light you want to shine in the world. And change will come to you. Be the change. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. And change will come to you.
Our reading this morning is from the book Democracy Awakening by Heather Cox Richardson. She writes, "The fundamental story of America is the constant struggle of all Americans, from all races, ethnicities, genders, and abilities, to make the belief that we are all created equal and have a right to have a say in our democracy come true. We are always in the process of creating a more perfect union. It is the enslaver Thomas Jefferson articulating those principles, and it is also Abraham Lincoln deciding to leave his lucrative law practice to stop the spread of human enslavement into the American West. But Just as powerful, it is ordinary Americans like Harriet Beecher Stowe turning her grief for her dead 18-month-old son into a story of why no mother's child should be sold away from her. Rose Herrera suing her former enslaver for custody of her own children. Julia Ward Howe demanding the right to vote so that her abusive husband could not control her life any longer. Sitting Bull defending the right of the Lakota to practice their own new religion, even if he did not believe in it. Som Song Bo telling the New York Sun that he was insulted by their request for money to build a pedestal for the Statue of Liberty when, 3 years before, the country had excluded people like him. Dr. Hector Garcia realizing that Mexican Americans needed to be able to vote in order to protect themselves. Edward Roberts claiming the right to get an education despite his physical paralysis. Storme de la Verrerie, the drag king who was identified with the first punch at the Stonewall riot that jump-started the gay rights movement. Our history is former sharecropper Fannie Lou Hamer continuing to organize Black Mississippi voters to have a say in our democracy, even after Mississippi police officers beat her nearly to death because, as she said, the only thing they could do was kill me. Thus ends the reading. Here at FPC, we share our plate, the money we receive in our weekly offering every week with different organizations that we have voted as a congregation, voted to choose to support. And every year there's a new one that appears that we've never chosen before. This year, that's the African Community Center of Lowell, and we have a video to share with you for more information. Please give as generously as you are able.
My name is Gordon Donko Ham, the Director for African Community Center. The African Community Center serves refugees and immigrants that have come from the continent of Africa. Today, we would like to thank Reverend Cynthia Landrum, Tina Grusowski, Peter Fish, Jeff Brown, and the Pledge Committee for thinking of ACCL as they are working on the plate sharing of this month of November. The proceed, the donation that will come to us will help refugees and immigrants that have come through our doors. With that, on behalf of the Board of Directors and the African Community Center, we want to say a big thank you to the First Parish Church of Stowe, Acton. May God bless us all. Thank you.
While the choir is coming up, I just wanted to say a big thank you to the members of the Parish Jazz Band who are joining us today. Big thanks especially to Michael for arranging everything, Peter, Quincy, Steve, and their special guest, our multi-talented accompanist Trevor Barrett, who's being a jazz organist today. Yeah. For the first time.
How do I follow that? So the election sermon, where the minister preaches on the subject of the election the Sunday before the presidential election, has a grand history in Unitarian Universalism, although it's changed a lot over the years. The late UU minister, the Reverend Forrest Church, in a sermon titled Religion and the Body Politic, talks about the election sermon preached the Sunday before a major election. And he writes, "It's a great literary genre. Often the brimstone was so hot that an election day sermon was the one sermon a minister might be remembered by." Don't count on that today. He says, "There was a reason for that. No words were minced. He entered the pulpit and for the next 2 hours, count your blessings, folks, proclaimed a Jeremiah, as in Jeremiah, the great Hebrew prophet. And here's how it went. The world has gone or is about to go to hell. And the reason is simple. God is punishing you for your sins. Whatever is wrong in this world is wrong because you are wrong-headed, wrong-hearted, inattentive to God's commandments, and God is watching, and God is angry, and if you keep on messing up, you will burn forever."
Yeah.
That's not what I'm preaching today. For many years, ministers would freely endorse candidates from the pulpit. This isn't a violation of the separation of church and state, because the separation of church and state is to prohibit the state from endorsing the church, not the church from impacting the state. So you have decades, maybe hundreds of years of ministers speaking forth on their candidates of choice, leading to one famously awkward incident in 1912. In 1912, the Unitarian minister John Haynes Holmes was a pretty famous and famously hot-headed and radical minister in the heart of New York at the Community Church of New York City. In 1912, there was a three-way race between Democrat Woodrow Wilson, Republican incumbent President William Howard Taft, who was a Unitarian himself, and Republican break-off Bull Moose Party candidate, former President Teddy Roosevelt. The Republicans were still the party of Lincoln in those days, and Taft himself was a Unitarian, but Roosevelt was supporting women's suffrage and declaring himself more progressive than Taft. And so he's a bit of a spoiler in the race. On the Sunday before the election, John Haynes Holmes had already prepared his sermon, and the church got word that President Taft was in the city and would be attending the church that day, and please reserve the first few pews for him and his retinue. And so it was that Taft sat there in the front pew of the church and heard John Haynes Holmes give his sermon endorsing Teddy Roosevelt. Taft is said to have said about it, "The blatherskite, he did everything but take up the offering for Teddy." Blatherskite, isn't that a great insult? It's Scottish. In fact, it wasn't until 1954 that Congress passed an amendment proposing by then-Senator Lyndon Johnson, which prohibited tax-exempt organizations, including churches, not just churches, but all tax-exempt organizations, from endorsing candidates or engaging in partisan political campaigning. And since then, frankly, churches still freely invite candidates to speak at them, and ministers freely endorse candidates all over the place, with few to none ever facing real action from the government about it. It's a grand old tradition. But in Unitarian Universalism, we've changed our election sermon tradition such that we toe that line, avoiding doing like the ministers of old. But in the last 4 years, the election sermon has undergone another major shift in the aftermath of pandemic, because in 2020, a pandemic provision allowed any voter to cast an absentee ballot, and we expanded the in-person voting, early voting. And in 2022, we made that permanent. So here we are on Election Sunday, the Sunday before the election, and how many of you have already voted? So I can't actually tell you who to vote for. You've already done it. If I was going to give a sermon telling you how to vote, I would have had to have given it weeks ago. And spoiler alert, I didn't. So the election sermon, which wasn't about telling you how to vote anyway, has to once again change to be something a little bit different. and thus I want to speak on democracy itself. When I was a kid, my parents would always take me with them to vote. I would watch as they filled in the bubbles and put their ballot into the box to be counted. And when I became a parent, I did the same with my child, bringing her with me to the ballot box and having her watch as I filled it in. Once, when one of her best friend's father was on the ballot for school board, I asked her, who should I vote for? Whose name on this list do you like and support? And I let her fill in that bubble. This year, I've helped her to hopefully get her absentee ballot, although it got lost in the mail and had to be reapplied for and still hasn't arrived. But we're excited that if that ballot finally arrives, she'll be casting her vote for president for the first time this week. Voting, I was raised to believe, is a civic duty, our absolute duty as Americans, almost religious in nature. It's so profound and sacred an act to perform. What happened 4 years ago, then, after the election, was not just anti-democratic, but profoundly un-American. And here I refer to the efforts to get the election overturned, not because of legal recounts, which I fully support, but the effort to get it overturned by having election officials stop the certification of votes at the county level and at the state level, and then trying to get Congress not to certify the election. These efforts took the form of individual pressure on individual election officials, all the way up to a riotous protest storming the US Capitol in an effort to stop the certification of the vote from happening, as people literally chanted to hang the ultimate man in charge, the vice president, because of his role in that certification that was happening. That has led to a lot of stress. And we wanted this Sunday to be an especially fun Sunday with full of exciting music and pies in the face, because we knew y'all are feeling a lot of stress, aren't you? How many of you have expressed stress, like expressed that you're feeling stressed? Hugely, almost all of you. And even now that most of us have already voted, the stress level remains extremely high leading up to the election, not just because we fear the outcome of the election, but also because there's a legitimate fear about what will happen after the votes have been counted or while the votes are being counted. Because while it's possible, remotely, that the vote will be decisive and overwhelmingly for either Trump or Harris, it's much more likely, as we all know, that the vote will be extremely close, as it has been for the last several. And especially in those swing states, my home state of Michigan being one, and that counting will continue for days as absentee ballot envelopes and early voting envelopes get opened and registered and counted. And what we fear is what can happen during that time and afterwards. We fear it because we've seen it, and because we've been hearing declarations, or lack of them, about what's going to happen. Donald Trump has been very carefully not saying that he will accept results of the election if he loses. When asked, will he respect the results during the first and only debate, he said he would if it is a fair and legal and good election. In a later interview with the Milwaukee Sentinel, he said, if everything's honest, I'll gladly accept the results. I don't change on that. If it's not, you're going to have to fight for the right of the country. So what does that mean? Well, one thing we know is that people who are election deniers, meaning that they deny that the 2020 election results were valid, have gotten themselves moved into position. The Organizers for Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, or CREW, reports that there are at least 35 county officials who have refused to previously certify elections, who are in positions to do so again in the key states of Arizona, Colorado, Georgia, Nevada, New Mexico, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. The good news on this is that the states themselves have been paying attention to and responding. So in Michigan, for example, which I follow the most closely since that's where I'm from, Wayne County, which contains Detroit, had two Republican County Board of Canvassers members, Monica Palmer and William Hartman, who initially refused to certify the 2020 election. They eventually did certify it only after enormous pressure with like a sort of Zoom session where people were calling in, phoning in, Zooming in, and pushing them for 2 hours with statements to force them to certify, and they did. But in 2022, Michigan voters amended their state constitution to say that county officials have, quote, a ministerial, clerical, non-discretionary duty to certify election results based solely on statements of returns from the precincts and absentee voter counting boards in the county and on any corrected returns. So, what can we do here in Massachusetts? We might feel like there's not a lot we can do other than hope that these states and their citizens will push forward certification of their actual vote totals, whatever they may be. We have to hold hopes and prayers for the institutions of our democracy to protect our democracy in perilous times. Because the real fear is what comes next, with Donald Trump saying, now if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. And while he walked back the context of that statement saying was specific to like the Detroit Union stuff, later in that speech he said, if this election isn't won, I'm not sure that you'll have another election in this country. People have been calling this the threat of fascism, because undermining faith in the democratic process, from calling results a lie to actually urging people not to vote, to telling them voting is unnecessary, by undermining faith in the democratic process, this is undermining democracy itself. In her book, Democracy Awakening, Heather Cox Richardson makes plain how this is fascism. She writes, in his autobiography, Mein Kampf, Adolf Hitler wrote that people were more likely to believe a giant lie than a little one, because they were more willing to tell small lies in their own lives, but would be ashamed to resort to large-scale falsehoods. She goes on a bit, and then she says, the U.S. Office of Strategic Services had picked up on Hitler's manipulation of his followers when it described Hitler's psychological profile. It said his primary rules were never allow the public to cool off, never admit a fault or a wrong, never concede that there may be some good in your enemy, never leave room for alternatives, never accept blame, concentrate on one enemy at a time, and blame him for everything that goes wrong. People will believe a big lie sooner than a little one. And if you repeat it frequently enough, people will sooner or later believe it. Parroting the lie, she says, becomes a loyalty pledge, even if, especially if, you don't believe it. So yes, democracy is definitely under threat right now. So what are we called to do? Well, for answers to that question, I turn to the book Saving Democracy, A User's Manual for Every American by David Pepper. Pepper starts off by saying we need to redefine our struggle as not about individual races, even one as big as the presidency itself, but about democracy itself. And then he outlines a bunch of strategies, and here's one relevant to us over here in the blue state of Massachusetts, where on election night it's going to feel like we don't even matter as they quickly declare us on the blue side and go on to watch county by county in those swing states. Pepper says, the battle for democracy must be fought in all 50 states. He points out that every single state has a state policy network devoted to the work of undermining democracy, and they're not just focusing on swing states, they're doing that, undermining democracy in every state. And as he says, any one state can serve as a petri dish for policies and strategies that can then be adopted in other states. That's something we know in Massachusetts. We can adopt policies here that serve as models for other states. Another one of Pepper's strategies is to ban the term off year and say we must always be fighting for democracy. So the battle for democracy doesn't end on Tuesday. It begins again on Tuesday. Pepper then tells us to dedicate our entire footprint to democracy, not just the one pinky toe that's the work we do volunteering for specific organizations or sending postcards, but our whole footprint, that is our purchasing, our family, our friends, our workplace, our unions, our social media, our neighborhoods, our church, our schools, and the places where we're a regular customer. Be fighting for democracy with our whole footprint. And if the worst comes to pass on Tuesday and in the weeks following, we'll need to be responding in this way, infusing all of our networks and all of our passions with creativity and purpose. When it comes to specifically election deniers trying to block the vote in counties, Pepper's main strategy is for us to run for those positions. A little too late for that for this year, but not too late for the future. But the good news is that there are organizations that have popped up to combat election interference, and one he points to is started by Kim Allen in Georgia called Power the Vote. In the 2 years since its founding, Power the Vote, he says, has funded voter protection staff in 5 states: Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, Florida, and Texas. So one thing we can do is help fund them as they fight those battles in those states. In sum, I'm not saying it's wrong to be worried. We definitely need to be worried about the future of our nation. This election has shown us that there's a creeping fascism that's not about one person or even one party, but about an overwhelming force within America that we need to be on guard against. But while we should have that worry, we can't let that fear control us, because there is reason to, despite all of that, for optimism. And there is reason for joy. As one of our presidential candidates said back in September, I'll give you a clue, she said, "I find joy in the American people. I find joy in optimism, in what I see to be our future and our ability to invest in it. I find joy in the ambition of the people. I find joy in the dreams of the people. I find joy in building community. I find joy in building coalitions. I find joy in believing that the true measure of the strength of a leader is not based on who you beat down, but who you lift up." And I think we should all find joy and have a sense of optimism about who we are as Americans and what we mean to each other and what we can do to lift each other up. So yes, joy is warranted, and joy and hope cometh in the morning. And so for hope, I give our last words to Howard Zinn. In his book, You Can't Be Neutral on a Moving Train, Howard Zinn wrote this: "To be hopeful in bad times is not to be foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending the spinning top of a world in a different direction." Howard Zinn continues, "And if we do act, in however a small way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presence, and to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory." May it be so. Go in peace, friends. For the couple of you who haven't voted, go and vote, friends. But more, go in hope and go in joy as we go into this week, because the future is a shining possibility before us. We're gonna sing and dance. Come on up here, choir. I'm gonna stay up here with you. Yes, we are. Here they come. Yeah. I'm actually
I need you, you need me.
That song is one that the Washington Post calls a gospel song that expresses what religious faith, romantic love, and political organizing have in common. Hezekiah Walker. Look it up if you haven't heard it before, if you're not familiar with it. Our words for benediction come from Lucas Hergert, Democracy's Benediction. We are democracy, unruly, unfinished, unrelenting, people of rebellious joy, taking to the streets, underground resilience, resisting complacence, the pleasure of activism, organizing into simple hope. We are democracy, people of principles taking on principalities, witnessing the worth of those called unworthy, justice just now gaining ground, integrity of interdependent existence extending, living democracy in heads, hands, hearts. We know that democracy can die, ossify, brittle byproducts of bygone idealists, plotting politician, pirating votes, corporations cannibalizing our care for the world. Look, it can wither, distend, come to an end. Democracy, today we will love you alive, make you ours, make you thrive, and vote as though our hope is on the line. Amen. Blessed be. Go in peace.
Our last number is Hymn to Freedom, and before we do it, I'd just like to give a thank you and a shout out to church member and choir member and pianist extraordinaire Trish Woods, who introduced this song to me about 10 years ago, Hymn to Freedom by the wonderful jazz pianist Oscar Peterson. Tricia, thank you.